Here comes everybody.
Hello.
Can you get us set up on Facebook?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like fun.
I don't know what's going on here.
We're just, setting up, we're going to try and live stream through Facebook. I'm going to mute everybody right now and just ask if everybody will just type in the chat box, where are you calling in from? Okay. Let's see. Oops. There we go.
Illinois, how awesome. Michigan. St. Petersburg, all right. I lived there for about a year or so. I absolutely love it.
That is so wicked cool.
Very cool.
All these folks coming in. Jupiter. Florida. Hey, Emily, that's so wicked cool.
Hello.
All right. So we are apparently streaming through Facebook, which is really cool, I think. And hopefully it'll all be good and I'll be able to, balance back and forth with folks. I'm going to open up the chat box so I don't miss anything here. Oh my heavens, look at all these. Maryland, Texas, California, Mel P from East Anglia, UK, woohoo, New Jersey, yeah. I'm from Boston. Emily's from Florida. Get Illinois here. Keep it coming, oh my heavens. One of my favorite peeps is joining all the way from Scotland. What?
Wow, that's awesome.
Canada, holy macaroni. Let's see. Austin. Oops, okay, no, we don't want that. We don't want to hear that in the background. All right, cool. All right, I'll give everybody a few seconds to get settled in. Quebec, Salt Lake City. Wow, all right. Barbara, oh my goodness, Barbara's coming in from Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Bob, how you doing? Look at this big crew we've got here. We're just asking folks to type in the chat box, where are you coming in from?
All right.
I'm sorry, Mel. We changed it at the last minute because we decided we wanted to do an interactivity with folks. So I'm hoping that folks will forgive the interruption. We're wicked psyched that you're here. Watching Eriskay, yeah. Yeah, Sally from Kansas City. All right, keep on posting. Now what I did was I muted everybody when they come in. Okay, oh gosh, all right, Mel, thanks. I hope that this isn't a problem in case others are having issues. Okay, that's wicked helpful, thanks. All right. And I'm just watching over here on Facebook for, hopefully folks will just join us there as well, which could be really fun. And you can watch me multitask.
Yes.
Which could be scary. So, all right, Em, I'm gonna let you go ahead and take it away.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining. This is the very first webinar that I've been hosting in collaboration with Mary Coughlin. It's such an honor to be doing this with you, Mary. So thank you again for that opportunity. So welcome everybody to our webinar titled Planetary Health, a Trauma-Informed Perspective. Okay. So before we start, there will be some, we'll kind of go over some webinar etiquette for everyone and kind of the flow of what we're going to be doing. We'd love to have you guys introduce yourselves briefly. I know we had in the chat where you all are coming from, which it was kind of just blowing my mind. I didn't realize that you all are just all over the country, even from out of the country. And then Mary might have some insight as to some more background from each of you that you brought from the surveys that some of you have answered before joining us. So for webinar etiquette and flow, Mary, would you like to kind of give everyone just some little tips and tricks if this is maybe their first time attending a webinar or something of this scale?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So we absolutely want your full-on attention. We want your full participation. We're going to invite you to make this full screen. Don't get distracted from anything else that might be popping up on your desktop. If you would mute your phone, that would be wicked awesome. If you'd even put your phone in another room, that might be even cooler. You know, just for the flow, and we've got so much information to share, but we will be opening it up to interaction. You know, we've muted everybody on admission into the room. If you have a comment or a question, I don't see a hand raise option on in the meeting, this meeting setup, but there is a clapping of the hands. If you go down into the reactions section across the bottom of your screen and you click on that, you get to give us a thumbs up or a clap. If you give us a clap, we're gonna go either way with it, but you know, we'll certainly be happy to take the applause, but we're happy to also take questions. Maybe you can even raise your hand now that I can see everybody, or throw it in the chat. I've got a question. So I don't want you to feel stressed about this. I certainly don't want to feel any more stressed about this. I'm pretty sure Em doesn't either. And we want you to feel like your needs are met. The goal behind this is really to start a movement and start awareness that the idea of trauma-informed care certainly is relevant for us as humans, but it's also relevant for all of our non-human partners on the planet, as well as the planet itself. So, you know, just approach this interaction with that, you know, open mind, with that love, and with that open heart as well. From the survey perspective, you know, we had, you know, kind of a handful of folks took advantage of participating in the survey, which we're massively grateful for. And I was really intrigued by the responses, that the majority of folks were really just interested in, what the heck is she talking about now? You know, planetary health and trauma-informed care. This is, of course, for my clinician colleagues, probably like, oh man, here she goes again. What's up her sleeve now? Which I'm psyched that the topic intrigued you. I also really loved learning how many of you guys, just in your day-to-day life, are very eco-aware and really wanted to learn more about how you can make a big impact on the planet and preserve planetary health. So thank you guys for participating. Just as a wrap up, you know, when we finish this, we'll be following up with an email, giving you a link to the recording of this seminar, so that, you know, if there was anything that just like blew your mind, you can go back and review, get your mind blown again, and maybe start jotting down some other strategies. In addition, Emily's made this amazing digital workbook that she'll share at the end of the session, just as like a sneak peek of what will also be available to you on the member site, but also as an attachment to the follow-up email. So I think that's kind of all of the housekeeping that's coming to mind. And can you think of anything else?
No, not from that perspective, but you know, I think we've kind of said hello ourselves. I'd love for maybe just a few people you can go ahead and maybe unmute yourself and just kind of give a short little synopsis about you and why you're here.
Be courageous.
I'll be courageous if you can hear and see me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Gwen Purvis, and I am coming from Salt Lake City, Utah. And I am from a different perspective, maybe as the rest of you, because I am not a nurse. I have been in the healthcare industry as a representative for 25 years. And I've heard so many positive things about you, Mary, and about the program. And we're trying to bring you as a program to Salt Lake City, Utah. And when I heard about the program that I could actually be a trauma-informed professional, I was like, I am in. So I'm really excited and really happy to learn from all of you.
Oh, thank you so much, Gwen. Well, we're wicked excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Barbara from Atlanta, And I've had, I guess, at least 3 great contacts with Mary. One was a very extended one where you spent the 4 years with us at our hospital, whipping us into shape very gently. And then at your Science and Soul in Bruges and at your house in Boston.
Yay!
So I feel like I'm very blessed to know you, and on a number of different levels, but also this whole topic is so close to my heart, and I always feel so weird at work because my practice is so different at work than it is at home, about the way that I approach sustainable, living. And I'm a nurse in a NICU here in Eggleston, or at Eggleston in Atlanta. So anyway, we have tried to do some little projects at our unit without much success because leadership sounded so interested, and then suddenly they just stopped responding. So I think they got scared of what we wanted to do. I don't really know. Anyway, I'm just really excited to hear what you have to say, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we hope that we can share some cool stuff that you can bring back to the hospital, really, and reignite that project that you're working on. That sounds awesome.
Sounds good.
Anyone else? All right. Any last calls for anyone who wants to introduce themselves and say hello while they're here?
We've got Betsy. Betsy's raising her hand.
All right.
Hi, I'm Betsy Vaught. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida, but we also just recently bought a home in Murphy, North Carolina. And part of the reason for that was because after working in St. Petersburg at a children's hospital in the NICU as a developmental specialist for 35 years, I needed more space. And what's happening on the planet is such a huge thing right now, and so many things are transforming that I really yearned to get back to the land and to more sustainable practices, and to really connecting with the beings on this planet in a relationship-based connection. And I'm talking about beyond human beings because, everything living on this earth is alive and vibrant, and we have so much to learn from that. And so my focus is really to see how you're merging those and to open to whatever I can learn from this process. So I really want to thank you all for bringing something that's so in the moment, present, important, and vital for the health of all beings on the planet right now. So thank you.
Awesome.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So,
Hi, my name's Ruth, and I'm in California near the Bay Area, and I'm a nurse in the NICU, and also in my spare time have a tiny little hobby farm. We have about 60 plus chickens, 3 ducks, dogs, cats, and we're up in the mountains, so we're kind of away from the city and everything, and pretty independent up here. So very connected to the earth.
wonderful. Love to hear that.
And we've got folks also sharing in the chat box as well. We've got Isabel from Canada. She's having some microphone issues, but she's watching the summit with her whole family. Mel Mcintyre from Scotland is a women's leadership coach and business mentor. Her 2-year-old is climbing all over her, so she definitely can't come off of mute. But she thinks the topic's really fascinating, and the link between trauma-informed care and the earth really is intriguing. So, and she's my business coach, so I'm wicked psyched that she's here. So this is really cool that that we have so many folks here. I mean, who knew? I think I'm just going to jump over just really quickly because the thing that prompted me to reach out to Emily was really in writing the second edition of Transformative Nursing in the NICU. The publisher came back and said, gee whiz, we want you to write a second edition. I was like, oh my goodness gracious, how does that work? And of course I made it way more complicated than I think it needed to be, but it's all good. It was a definite amazing experience for me. And in particular, when I was working on the chapter for the core measure, the healing environment, which I hope many of you are familiar with, the healing environment core measure covers the physical environment, the human environment, and then the organizational environment. And as I was doing the research, I was really blown away by all the, what to me was brand new research, with regard to the connection between nature and health. My original interest was looking at that connection of nature, planet, health, and, the developing infant, and then the mother-infant dyad. And the spectrum just, blew me out of the water that, yes, of course, there are implications for, the antepartum, the antenatal experience, perinatal and postnatal experience for both mother, infant, and family. But then also just in general, because what I've included in this second edition is not just the core measures and the relevance for the infant, but I've really amped up the relevance for the family, and then included this whole new dimension across each core measure of the relevance of these core measures to the clinicians that are caring for these infants and families. So I really dove into the connection between nature and our health, right, as grown-ups, as clinicians, and was really intrigued. And so it's just so funny, all the connections in the world, right? So Emily's mom is a really good friend and colleague of mine, Susie Johnsen. She's a nurse out of Florida. And I was chatting with Susie and she said, oh my goodness, my daughter Emily is a marine biologist. And I thought, well, my goodness, I need to, check out this chick and pick her brain. And so we started chatting back in like early summer, maybe late spring. And, I was just mesmerized by the wealth of knowledge that Emily had and the lens, right? So being a nurse, as much as, you try and be open-minded, I mean, I have been cultured onto the plant in a certain way, and I look at things a certain way, and chatting with Emily, that just, kind of blew up, and I really could see the relevance. And as we talk, and for many of you guys, who are familiar with me, probably wouldn't be surprised, we just kind of got on this tear. And the next thing you know, I was like, oh my gosh, trauma-informed care for the planet. Yes, this makes so much sense. And Emily, God bless her, was like, yes, this makes so much sense. And it led us to where we are today, which is really amazing to see so many folks intrigued and interested in this topic. I'm wicked excited to share more with you all. So
Yes, thank you so much, Mary. So without further ado, some brief introductions. Of course, go right ahead, Mary. So for those of you who are attending, I know this has been both, from my whole community and Mary's medical community. We're kind of joining both professional, medical, and non-medical people together. So for those who don't know Mary, go right ahead, introduce yourself.
I'm a neonatal nurse practitioner by training. I'm now an entrepreneur and a pioneer leader for healthcare transformation. And as I kind of alluded to originally, getting really connected. I mean, I've always considered myself eco-friendly, but really diving into the bigger vision for what constitutes a healing environment has been really amazing, and just compelled me to want to share this information with you in partnership with Emily. So that's me. That's me and my partner in crime here.
Yeah. So hi everyone. For those who do not know me yet, my name is Emily Johnsen. I got my degree, my master's in marine biology and my bachelor's in marine biology here in Florida. I'm a Florida native, been here my whole life. I'm a National Geographic certified educator. I've just picked up a position as a biology teacher at an independent high school here in South Florida. I've always been fascinated by the natural world, from being outside to being in the water, hiking all over at the national parks in our beautiful country. As I've grown older, I've always been interested in what is underwater, but I've realized more and more from a biological perspective how what's below the water is greatly impacting what's above the water, and vice versa. All of these systems on our planet are interconnected, and therefore how we live our lives and how we interact with one another is also what impacts our planet, and vice versa. So, my passion really lies in understanding those interconnectivities, educating and sharing those different aspects with people and with my students. And on a conservation standpoint, really helping those that cannot speak up for themselves, giving them a voice, whether that is a human being, whether that's wildlife or the ecosystems that they inhabit. So with
Emily, I
Mary,
have to make a comment. I love what you said, because I know from my NICU colleagues, speaking up on behalf of those who don't have a voice. I mean, that's really the cornerstone of what we do in neonatology and in pediatrics. Pre-verbal people, our job is to be their advocates. And I love the expansion of that concept, kind of as Betsy also alluded to, that it's wildlife, it's ecosystems, it's everything. So that was beautiful.
Thank you. So kind of just briefly going over what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to be obviously getting into what is planetary health. This is a very new, kind of like a nascent concept in the field of not just science, it's interdisciplinary. So it covers many different fields, of course, as we're bringing professionals from medical and non-medical fields together. How trauma-informed care, this is really Mary's expertise, how that relates to planetary health. Mary's all about this, the cosmos and consciousness, what it means to be rooted here, as human beings on our planet, and how those interconnectivities really work. And of course, talking about all this, we talk about problems, but talking about problems without doing anything is just whining. So we need solutions, right? And so that's what we are going to be hopefully inspiring and giving you guys some ideas of what we can do, both from a medical and non-medical professional standpoint, to integrate planetary health into both, your professional practice and also your day-to-day lifestyle. So the objectives here, we want to better understand the concept of planetary health and how each individual person plays a role. This is the first time that these two concepts are being integrated together. So, this webinar isn't just about, Mary and I talking at you about problems and solutions. We're doers, and that's what we were thinking when we first created this webinar, is that we don't want to just present information. We want to give you the tools necessary to actually to do something, to start to give action, because without action, we can't obtain solutions. So that does require participation, from everybody. We want to better understand how the integration of a trauma-informed care perspective can, create better solutions in medical and non-medical communities, develop solutions to addressing broken systems within societies. This is something that's really, really interesting, and again, very complex, that we hope to give you some insight about. Recognizing personal and community barriers to high-level wellness. Again, there might be some new terms here that some individuals and attendees may not have heard before, so we hope to enlighten you on that. And really, again, at the end of the day, develop a plan of action for alleviating these symptoms of different crises pertaining to planetary health. There's, as you will see, there's nothing that happens here on our planet that isn't interconnected in some way. So every single person here has a purpose. You have a job to do. We have, whether or not you believe in destiny, we are all given gifts. We all have skills that can be used towards the greater good of humanity and the world. So we hope to kind of bring that out of each and every one of you. Okay. And so I just love this quote here, our common ground is, the earth is what we all have in common. It really is. So, whether you are a teacher like myself, whether you're a nurse like Mary, or whether you are a construction worker even, what brings us all together, and that is planetary health. And that again is why I fell in love with this field so much, because it allows people from all different fields to really come together to understand that they each have a role to play. And so when it really comes to understanding our planet and wanting to make it better, this is where we really tend to think of making the environment better only for environmentalists. So, Mary, from your perspective, from the medical perspective, are there other people that can be included in, the planetary health and in the environment? Like, is that just my job?
Good golly, I hope not. Although I think you do a fantastic job, but I think you're absolutely right. The things that are so in our face, we tend to dismiss and trivialize and minimize, and we don't really realize that you don't need, obviously a huge movement of like-minded, compassionate, ecologically minded people can really make a big change, but that doesn't mean that one individual also can't make a change. And I think, from a healthcare perspective, how many diseases are actually influenced by the environment, by perturbations and pollutants and all that kind of stuff that we've created in disrupting the environment. When one example that comes right to mind is the work that's been done by Monterossi and his team, the Italian folks that I'm like madly in love with, but they really show how, that antenatal experience that really sets the tone. So the health of the mother, her dietary intake, the quality of the air that she breathes, the quality of the water that she takes in, her nutrition, all of these things that have been influenced from the environment can influence not only her health, but her fertility, and also, should she be able to, conceive, the health and the developmental trajectory and all the implications of that to that fetus and ultimately human being. So it's just huge when you really just open your mind and step out of your silo, right? Many of us are just so trapped in these silos that we miss the opportunity to make a bigger impact. And that bigger impact is really what we've been called to do on the planet. That's why all of you guys were called to join us today, because you're agents of change for this mission.
Agents of change. I love that phrase. I hear it here and then, bits and pieces in different works, but it's a phrase that is really so powerful, and I just love it. So what is planetary health? We've been already talking about it a little bit, but in total, planetary health really it's an inquiry into our total and natural world, plain and simple there. And this whole concept here was really kind of created by someone named Dr. Halbert Dunn. He's now kind of one of my idols. He is what you would call probably the father of the wellness movement. Whether you are a medical or non-medical professional, everyone knows what wellness is. There's days dedicated to mental and physical wellness. So wellness is now a thing, and he was really the father of that. He was also a biostatistician, and he coined the term high-level wellness, which we'll get into in a little bit in the 1960s. That's really just now kind of, in my opinion, really starting to be understood. So I read a paper several months ago by Susan Prescott, Alan Logan, and David Katz on this very concept. And it was titled Preventative Medicine for Person, Place, and Planet, Revisiting the Concept of High-Level Wellness and the Planetary Health Paradigm. It's a very long mouthful, but this paper was just so influential for me. As having a science background, I've read many different articles and research papers, which I'm sure there's a good amount of you that have as well. And sometimes they can be a little heavy, and maybe you kind of skip through some of the, the data, and you just want to get to the conclusion of what that paper was all about. But this paper has become almost kind of like a Bible, if you will, to me on planetary health. I've read it so many times over the past few months, and it really has influenced so much of what we discussed today. So a lot of these concepts, I will be referring back to Prescott, Logan, and Katz, because I really can't take credit for it myself. This is really their work based on the work of Dr. Halbert Dunn. He's really revolutionary when it comes to this. So when discussing planetary health in terms of achieving this global high-level wellness, it really allows scientists of diverse fields, from microbiologists, geologists, and even cardiologists, in the medical field, to really come together and bring relevancy to their work on such a broader scope. Fighting issues like climate change and even poverty and things like political unrest. Like, all of these things are interconnected, and you'll hear that word a lot, but it is so prevalent when it comes to planetary health. So, Mary, I just wanted to ask you really quick here, as a medical professional, like, did you ever consider that your work can and actually does go beyond the physical concept of human health? Because as a nurse and anyone in the medical field, you already have such a huge, pressure on you. I mean, you guys are saving lives every single day, whether it's a baby, a child, and an adult, and, geriatrics even. And so to think like, oh gosh, now I can't only worry about humans, I have to worry about the planet too. Like, how is that how you look at it? Like, what does that make you feel?
I mean, to be honest, at the beginning of my career, no, I really didn't. I was completely, funneled and focused in on, the clinical dimensions of the work. Even though, the philosophical underpinnings of being a nurse, and I know we have multiple disciplines here, but the underpinnings of being a nurse is really about managing the human experience of disease. And so that does go beyond just the medical or the pathophysiology, that we really are called to address the spiritual dimensions, right, of the individual's experience with disease, the existential dimensions of that, but also, what are the other aspects of their life that may be contributing to their compromised health. So, individuals that live in food deserts, people that have, challenging transportation issues, water contamination, all these other kinds of issues, really, it is really incumbent on us, but our current paradigm isn't really focused on that. We're really all about symptom management. And I think by, kind of kicking this off with this virtual summit is really an invitation for our colleagues here to look at the bigger picture, that, this isn't about adding something else onto your plate. It's realizing that it's all interconnected. There is no separation. And so we need to really recognize it. I was really excited to hear Barbara talk about the initiatives that they're doing. I mean, I don't know the details, but when you think about healthcare, and this is me, so if I'm wrong, just take it with a grain of salt. But my perspective is we have a very throwaway mentality. We're very, everything's disposable. I don't even know how many folks really can acknowledge, and now I forget the number, but healthcare as an industry has a huge carbon footprint, on the planet. And we don't even think about that. We don't think about the consequences of it because we kind of say, oh, we're saving lives. Of course, this is wicked important, But the takeaway message is saving lives and being ecologically aware and sensitive and mindful aren't mutually exclusive. That we really need to appreciate, what is it that we're contributing to the planet? How are we helping other people be aware of, planetary issues and planetary health at the same time? I see Barbara wrote over here, I feel like Mary has helped us to save lives, not in the having a heartbreak sense, but in the living your best life sense. Sometimes I feel sick at what I throw away at work. I mean, Emily, it's tragic what we dispose of without even a thought, because, I mean, obviously we are thinking about caring for others, but we're tunnel vision. So I think this message really needs to get out in a larger way. I mean, here we are in the throes of a global pandemic, and think about, you know, I mean, certainly we have resource limitations, you know, big gaps in resources, but I also see clinicians and colleagues getting then creative. You know, I mean, safety is always paramount, but we have to really think, you know, in a larger view of what that means, you know, across every dimension. So I think so thank you for asking. I mean, that's just my perspective. Please, you know, add your thoughts in the chat box. You know, I don't know, you know, if anyone else has really given thought to this, you know, through the lens of their practice as a clinician or as a medical professional, but it is a responsibility. Oh, so Priscilla writes here, absolutely, the carbon footprint, the amount of plastic gloves, wrappers, tubing we use every day just to take care of one patient per ship. It is gobsmacking. I do find in the work that I've done with our European colleagues that there is a little more of awareness to this disposable thing, and they're always looking for things that, you know, aren't disposable. Can we reuse them? Can we recycle them? Can we repurpose them? And that sort of thing. But I think in the US, we really have been accultured to this disposable mindset. You know, plastic bottles for breast milk and formula, absolutely. Mel writes, I think one of the issues in our society is how short-term we are in our thinking. We care more about immediate ease than the long-term implications for the planet. So, and this, you know, this is really wonderful reading these comments, because, you know, we have got nurses, we've got therapists, we've got, you know, coaches, we've got, you know, educators, and we've got a very diverse group here attending this session here and on the Facebook page as well. And so it really does, it's warming my heart right now to see the diversity of commitment to the planet and to planetary health. So this feels super timely. I'll stop talking. I could go on.
No, absolutely. Again, and that's what's so beautiful about planetary health, because it is a conversation that just keeps going and going and going. So, you know, I won't keep going and going, you know, to kind of jump on that train there. But, you know, this webinar won't be the end of these conversations. And that's why we created that Facebook page for you all to join. There's going to be a digital reflection journal that we give everyone who attends to really get these things going. But before then, let us, Mary and I have a video that we'd like to show you, really pertaining to, again, to the medical field, but bringing this full circle, you know, even from the non-medical professional standpoint. So let's cross our fingers here and see how this goes.
I used to see.
Let me try it one more time.
I used to see black spots on the lungs of mostly smokers. Over the last decade or so, I saw a series of teenagers with black spots on the lung. And I thought to myself, oh my God, what's happening?
What could be causing this epidemic of lung disease? The answer, it turned out, was in the air.
In India, the bulk of pollution comes from crop burning, garbage being burned, vehicular pollution, and industry, which releases tons and tons of toxic smoke into the air. I have seen it with my own eyes. We need to do something about it.
Fossil fuel combustion is a main cause of air pollution in India and around the world. It's also the biggest driver of climate change.
The bushfire experience across Australia was an extraordinary experience. We had weeks and months in some places of hazardous air pollution and poor air quality. Some thousands of people were in hospital with heart disease and arrhythmias. They had heart attacks and strokes. We know that lung infections and pneumonia is made more likely by exposure to pollution of that nature.
Health professionals are realizing that climate change is one of the greatest health threats of the 21st century.
Climate change is fundamentally a public health issue. We know from ample evidence that we are in a critical moment when it comes to climate action. And unfortunately, the healthcare sector, both in the US and around the world, is a huge contributor to global greenhouse gas emissions and climate change.
If healthcare was a country, it would be the 5th largest climate polluter on the planet. And if we're going to protect people's health from climate change, we need to move away from fossil fuels. The sector needs to take action to reduce its own emissions.
These are doctors from all around the world tackling climate change as a public health crisis, while also bringing sustainable practices to a major contributor to climate change: healthcare.
I do get asked sometimes, why would a pediatrician be involved in climate action? I feel that it is my duty to think about what are the factors outside of my clinic that really are contributing to my patients' well-being. If the operations of healthcare delivery are doing harm, that seems completely antithetical to the oath that I took.
What we need to do is really reinvent healthcare in the 21st century.
Overall, the biggest source of healthcare's climate footprint is the sector's use of fossil fuels, whether it's burning fossil fuels on site to produce energy, whether it's buying energy produced by coal, oil, and gas, or whether it's in the supply chain, which is a huge part of healthcare's footprint.
What's shifted for me in the last year or two has been the profound recognition that climate change affects us now. If we were better at addressing disease before it gets to the point where people end up in hospital, then we can significantly decrease the carbon footprint. We need to be proactive in taking that longer term view.
When healthcare providers realize that their actions and the sector that they work for is actually contributing to the burden of disease, they're ready to take action.
The whole debate about climate change is live in our community. There has been a central commitment that the NHS will meet net zero by 2050. We employ around 1.7 million staff. I think we're the 5th biggest employer in the world. We're responsible for about 5% of the UK's carbon emissions. At Newcastle hospitals, we now recycle 43% of our non-clinical waste. 60% of our staff come into work using sustainable modes of travel, and we've banned use of diesel and petrol cars in our fleet.
Doctors, nurses, hospitals, and health systems in more than 70 countries have joined together with the International Network Healthcare Without Harm to build a global movement for sustainable and equitable healthcare, for clean air, and for a healthy climate.
If we look at this health and climate change dynamic, we see hope. We see hope because individual action makes a difference to your health and well-being.
So the first step to solution is to become aware, awakened, and then only the action will come.
Health professionals today who are interested in climate action have so many opportunities to get involved that relate to energy efficiency, clean energy, sustainable purchasing, healthier foods. We're very powerful as exemplars for our patients.
Two of the greatest health threats of the 21st century are climate change and the global pandemic, and we've got one on top of the other.
I am optimistic that if we can contend with one threat at the moment, we can probably contend with a whole series of threats at the moment. It's the most extraordinary time to be imagining the human future.
If you want to have healthy people, you need to have a healthy planet.
For more on how health professionals are advocating for a healthy planet and what you can do, please visit healthforclimate.org.
Wonderful. I hope that was really just a good overall consensus for really what's going on in the medical field, which has been super enlightening for me, again, as a non-medical professional. But it's really almost kind of interesting, Mary, because here we are, right beforehand, talking about how quite literally, medical professionals are like on the front lines in not just pandemics like COVID-19, but in war and famine, but also for planetary health, especially climate change. And now we're seeing that medical professionals are also part of the problem. So which one is it?
Well, I mean, again, if you think about the healthcare as an industry, it's certainly, it's not unlike any other industry, where the driver is revenue. The driver is the bottom line and making a buck. And I think, you know, my takeaway from the video and what I've been reading is really about recognizing the strength that we have to be that voice. There's over 4 million nurses in the United States alone. That's a huge number of folks that can really, you know, take up the call and make a difference, you know, across all of the beings, as Betsy said, on the planet, which will also obviously help the planet as well. So I think, you know, really calling out, particularly, you know, the hospitals, lots of hospitals are undergoing new construction, and really having that voice. And, you know, and I get, like, you know, you feel like you're talking to a wall a lot of times, and it can be really defeating and, you know, minimizing, and you feel, you know, kind of cast away. But, you know, you've got to, you know, be persistent. Now, there's lots of strategies that you need to employ in order to maintain and sustain that level of persistence. You know, self-care, you know, alignment, body, mind, and spirit, taking really good care of yourself so that you can really give that extra effort, not only to your patients, right, but to the larger issues that we're talking about here. So it's, you know, clinicians feel it, you know, feel the, what do you call it, the dichotomy as well, you know, with what it is, you know, the work that we're trying to do, but the obstacles that we face in doing the work, you know, and the work for the planet, it, you know, obviously is what we're focused on today, but we struggle with even some of just the local stuff, you know, like, do we have enough masks? Do we have enough, you know, X, Y, and Z? How can we, you know, look at, you know, purchasing in a different way? Well, ask the nurses, ask the frontline clinicians, you know, instead of just going for the cheapest thing. Mel Mack, you know, kind of mentioned in her comment earlier, we're really short-sighted. You know, we're looking for the, you know, the quick win that actually doesn't serve us in the long haul. So I think that was really a great video for me, you know, to kind of really see not only the level of injury, but also the level of opportunity that we have to become advocates.
Yeah, that was put beautifully. So really, it's almost like a trick question, because in reality, you know, we're all part of the problem, right? And that's not a bad thing, you know, because we're part of a larger global problem. That doesn't mean we're bad people. But, you know, ignoring that, denying things that are blatantly there in science, you know, that's contributing to, you know, a real problem. But in reality, we are all also the solution. We're the only solution. You know, we have to be. You know, as a human race, we've become so used to doing that whatever we want, you know, without a thought of how it actually impacts our home. And so that's what leads us into the various, you know, footprints that we have in terms of pollution, exploitation of natural resources, and even things like excess and blind consumerism that's not looked at as often as maybe it should. I know earlier, Mary, you were mentioning, you know, pollution in healthcare industry. You know, that's just really a small fraction. I think, you know, pollution itself, whether that's air pollution, plastic pollution, especially water pollution, chemical pollution, there's so many different kinds. You know, that today is really kind of taking steam, because I think it's one of those planetary health issues that is, it's physical. We can see it. You can go to a beach and see pollution, take a picture and share it on social media, and people know that that's a problem because they can see it. Whereas, you know, other issues such as climate change, or issues such as, you know, the obesity that we're seeing, you know, grow and grow in places like America and even Mexico, those are bigger issues that we don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis, or those changes. You know, similarly to if you know, we all have family members or even friends that we may live with from day to day, and every single day you don't notice them looking any different. But if you take a picture from when they're 15 to when they're 30, that physical change is very apparent. And so that's what we're seeing in so many different levels of data in this science, is that, you know, things are changing. It's such at a low, minuscule, undetectable level on a daily basis that we don't see it.
It's very, very slow moving, very, very insidious. And as you were speaking, you were making me think about, even at the microbial level, you know, when we think about our microbiome, you know, and all of the different environmental factors that influence that. And when we influence it, you know, there's positive effects sometimes, but oftentimes there's negative effects. You know, if I zoom into the, you know, micro ecosystem in the NICU, and I look at the patients that I care for, and, you know, observe how the disruptions to their microbiome are altering their health. I mean, one of the biggest consequences that we see in our face is necrotizing enterocolitis, which is a lethal, I mean, it can be very lethal condition. And the simple things that we can do to augment the microenvironment, right? You know, think about the macro. I mean, we think about the macro as being kind of like the whole NICU, but think about, you know, the macro being the whole planet, and how diet, nutrition is implicated in the health of our microbiome that then confers, you know, a level of health to ourselves. There's linkages to microbiome perturbations, to obesity, to autoimmune disease, to lots of things. And we're so stuck in this idea that there's like a straight line, you know, that, oh, you've got an alteration here, it's this. You got an alteration here, it's this. And we're persistently refuting the fact that human health, as well as planetary health, is messy, it's convoluted, it's interconnected. You know, that whole butterfly effect, right? I mean, we're really not paying attention to the larger issues and the larger influences that affect us right down to that very microscopic microbial level. You know, when I, you know, think about COVID-19, you know, I mean, there are a lot of these things that are happening that are mediated by our presence on the planet and our lack of concern and awareness of what our presence is doing to the planet. You know, we've got this very, you know, hierarchical, you know, kind of, oh fudge, what's the word? It's escaping me right now. You know, like I'm the boss of you kind of a mindset with everything, with the planet. And we're takers, we're dominators, we're, you know, pillaging the planet and not really appreciating the consequences. And we like to silo it all so that it looks nice and neat, and that this area isn't spilling over into this area. But what we really know on the front line and in our day-to-day lives, that there is spillage, you know, that the human footprint is affecting us not only in the hospitals, but in our day-to-day lives, in the rainforests, you know, in the mountains, in the sea. And I think until we can really voice that consistently and loudly, and I'm not saying that there aren't great advocates out there, but it's not just one sector's job. It's all of our jobs, you know.
Exactly. And when you mention the, you know, microbiomes on our bodies, I mean, think of how many, probably thousands of different species of bacteria and, you know, microbiome, like different organisms that are probably just crawling all around us. It sounds gross to think about, but, you know, there's such a high diversity, high biodiversity, even on our bodies. And so when we think of that in, you know, from a health perspective, you know, as you were kind of mentioning, Mary, that high biodiversity, you know, of, you know, microbiome organisms on our body. Yeah, you know these terms better than I do. You know, on our body, that kind of translates into you know, better health for us. You know, we're more resilient to those really harmful bacteria, or really even viruses, probably. So from an ecological standpoint, you know, for those who are, you know, from the more biological perspective, you know, when we reduce that biodiversity in places like the ocean, in places like, you know, rainforests and even grasslands and wetlands like we have here in Florida, reducing that biodiversity really impacts the resiliency of these ecosystems. And so as we continue to extract those precious resources, that many of them are non-renewable, you know, we are taking away that resiliency. We are encroaching also onto those spaces. And so we see wildlife more and more encroaching upon our homes and where we live. But in reality, it's really us encroaching upon their space. And so we see when you have all these species come in too close contact with each other, things like COVID-19 happen. And this has been predicted by experts for years. And, not to be, the negative Nancy in here. I mean, hopefully not, fingers crossed, but this is probably not the only, widespread pandemic that we will face in our lifetime. I mean, I hope not, but because of what we're doing and that continuous extraction of resources at an unsustainable level, we will see things like this more and more.
Betsy just commented in the chat box too, and it's such a beautiful metaphor. Like our bodies as a homeostatic engine is such a beautiful metaphor for the planet at large, and even for the universe, that our planet strives to come back into homeostasis when things are out of balance, just like our bodies. And when we have these perturbations to our microbial envelope, if you will, then we become more vulnerable, just like the planet. When we look at these mass extinctions, those jeopardize that envelope of safety and protection and purpose for the planet. And I just have to share, and this might sound really goofy, and I don't know how many folks how you're going to respond, but I think about my lawn, my backyard, and particularly now it's fall and everything, and there's leaves everywhere, and I've really been trying to be mindful about ecologically friendly yard work and lawn work and stuff like that, and read some really cool stuff that said, leave the leaves be, I mean, that they protect a microsystem within the yard that actually feeds the planet. So, I'm in the Northeast, it's cold, and, everything dies, and, everybody everybody hibernates, everything and everybody hibernates. But in that process, it actually renews the earth. And so, trying to get out of my head of like, what will the neighbors think because I'm not raking up the leaves and bagging them up, and and then I don't know what they do with them. Like the garbage man takes these bags of leaves. I don't know what they do with them. Do they seed them around I don't know, vacant lots? I don't know what they do with them, but why don't I just leave them in my backyard? There's a small little action that I feel can, it might seem inconsequential, but it makes me feel like, no, you know what, I'm not going to get crazy about this. We'll clean it up in the spring when we're trying to, allow everything to grow and come through, but not get all crazy about it in the fall. So it's interesting when you think about it, and we're so used to being, well, how can I say this? Thinking that our actions can be inconsequential when, if I can save my little, I don't know how many, quarter of an acre lot here in the city of Boston, if I can save the ecosystem there, well, woohoo, right? That's one step closer to stabilizing the planet. So I think although, a lot of this stuff can feel really daunting, there is an invitation to, kind of bring it down to what can you do with your human footprint on the planet, in your little neighborhood.
Exactly. And I kind of like that caring, caring essentials is, the name of your company, Mary, but, just that act of being able to care about something other than yourself, which really kind of leads us into not only our physical actions, of course, pollution and resource extraction and even, excess and blind consumerism, but the way that we act as people, which in a meeting with Mary and myself one day, I kind of just realized, it's always the same solution. It's just everyone needs to be nice. Everyone needs to be kinder and have more empathy. And so when it comes to, societal barriers, again, this was really proposed by, Prescott, Logan, and Katz in that preventative medicine for person, place, and planet. But, the biggest societal barriers that we have as of right now are, first and foremost, something called authoritarianism. For those who are unaware, it's a lack of concern for the wishes or opinions of others. Whereas social dominance orientation it's like a related psychological construct that is characterized by the attraction to hierarchy and in areas of prestige within these social systems. So this social dominance orientation, it captures beliefs regarding the acceptability or entitlement of high status groups to dominate other groups, and attitudes towards maintaining social and economic inequality. So what that basically means is, that can also be summed up in many ways by, racism. That in itself is a barrier to planetary health. So higher scores on the social dominance orientation scales, according to Prescott, Logan, and Katz, those higher scores are associated with lower empathy, less concern for matters of social justice, and less concern for inequalities. So these are things that are currently barriers to planetary health from a human perspective. And of course narcissism, which I think is probably exploding even more just with the growing popularity of and use of social media in today's society. But the sense of self-importance over another, thinking that the world revolves around you, or the world revolves around this person, whereas it really doesn't. We all are important. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has their role to play.
If I can take that just one step further, Emily, so in the trauma-informed professional certificate program, where the learner, the applicant or potential certificant goes through these different attributes of development, and one of the attributes is about healing intention. And we've delineated the attributes, or the aspects rather, of that attribute around Jean Watson's Caritas processes. Now hang on, I'm getting to my point in a second. One of her processes is about valuing humanity. And I was actually just, doing some research and reading, to enrich the content within that particular module. And it really highlights, these societal barriers are really the reason why we have these socioeconomic inequities. That several of the papers were looking at the value of human life. And that people actually have created formulas of how they determine the value of human life. And the majority of the influences are the folks that are, from these high income countries, that, we base the value of a human life based on the GDP of that particular country. And in the paper, they were actually talking about, so countries that have lower GDP, they're inferring that they actually have their human life is lower in value. And so I think, when we start looking at, planetary health, it's more than the trees, right? It's because we are organisms on the planet as well. And although right now we're doing a lot of damage on the planet, if we could get our act together collectively and address and mitigate these traumas, right? Because that's what this is all about, right? These societal barriers are actually traumas that the planet and all of the inhabitants, all of the organisms, all of the ecosystems are being subjected to, that are causing all of this disequilibrium and disharmony. So it's just really, when you think about it in that way, in that shared, that unity that we have with the other beings, as Betsy said, the other organisms, the other life forces on the planet, then we can see that we really do have to stand up. When we stand up for racism, against racism, when we stand against racism, we're actually standing for humanity. We're standing for the planet. We're standing for global health. We're standing for climate change, because they're all interconnected.
Exactly. And it really all just kind of points to empathy. We all kind of need that sense of empathy. So speaking of, we unfortunately won't be able to have everyone share just due to, time and everything. So if we could maybe have just a few people kind of share with us their, a picture. We asked before the seminar here, or the webinar, to kind of bring a picture, whether it's on your phone or even just like printed, old style. Share a photo with us of your favorite vacation destination, either if it's some place you visited or maybe wish to visit in the future. Show us what that looks like.
You're able to do it? Are you able to pull it up on your screen, or maybe just kind of put it in front of the camera, an image? I'm gonna fly through everybody's, fly through the attendance. Just put a picture right up on the screen on your, where your camera is so we can see what a picture of, what's your favorite picture? Oh man, look at those beautiful pictures. Y'all seeing them? Hey.
Oh my gosh, we got some, it almost looks like the Pacific Northwest, I see. There's one of a cruise ship in, I think, Alaska. That looks awesome.
Oh, I love it.
Wow.
And there's some mountains, a mountain scene there with trees I saw. Yep, the land coming to the sea, so maybe a beach person. I love the imagery of the oceans. I'm just gonna, I want to make sure that I'm flying through everybody's picture.
Aw, beautiful trees. Yes, I see that. Wow.
Oh, Belle over here has uploaded an image. And you guys over on Facebook, you know, make a description of what's your favorite vacation spot. What does it look like? Share a description of that in the comments section. The folks over here on the Zoom are sharing beautiful images of nature, of the ocean, hiking in the Canadian Rockies, Hawaii. Oh, that was
Hawaii,
a sweet picture there.
Yes, beautiful. Love that. So, I don't know about you, Mary, but I'm kind of seeing a pattern of all of these photos being shared here.
Predicted.
Yes. So we kind of saw this one coming, but you know, what's really just so wonderful to see is that for the majority of us, when you think of a place that you want to travel to or your favorite vacation destination, more so than not, we tend to think of places in nature. We tend to want to be in nature, whether that's the mountains or on a tropical island, or maybe hiking, even through like desert in grassland areas. You know, our most memorable experiences and adventures are often spent in nature. So needless to say, you know, we need it. We need it to feel alive. We need it to be fulfilled. That green and that blue, that is what makes us happy. You know, it's not, we need nature. You know, it's not, it's funny, it's not really a hippie thing to say it, because it's really a matter of fact. You know, we are a result of Mother Nature herself. So of course we need it. You know, we thrive on it. And, you know, in terms of enjoyment, that's what we love to do.
I mean, and it's a full-on multi-sensory experience, right? When you're sharing your pictures, I mean, you know, we're struck by the imagery, but when you're there, when you're hiking the Rockies, or when you're on the beach in Kauai, or wherever you might be, it's that full-on, right? It's the air, it's the sounds, it's the smells, in addition to the visual experience, right? It's a total surround sound experience. And that is the piece of the nature that we connect with, that aligns with our own biological rhythms, our own biological sights, sounds, smells. That's just, it's all together, right? Mm-hmm. And you feel it, right? I mean, how many of you guys feel great when you're outdoors, right? Right? I mean, raise your hand, right? You feel rejuvenated, you feel refreshed. You may feel challenged, but it's an exhilarating challenge, right? And so all of that, look at everyone's, I love this. Pompeii, Italy, recently retired, so I'm enjoying 3.5 acres. Yes, you know, we're connected to nature because we are part of nature. And when we're disconnected from it, there's significant implications for human health. And you know, on this slide, we're talking about the implications from a mental health perspective. And there's been actually a pretty significant amount of research that's really looked at the implications of exposure to nature and mental health, that folks that are removed from experiences within nature report higher levels of anxiety. They have, they're more vulnerable for depression, higher risk of suicide, non-communicable diseases as well. And so those are like the diseases that are mediated by lifestyle. So lifestyle diseases are like cardiac disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, you know, the list goes on and on. And that, you know, when we are able to make, you know, nature and experiences in nature part of our daily routine, it actually promotes health. And I mean, and it might just be obvious, right? You know, people that like to spend time in nature, obviously, you don't just sit in nature. I mean, you do, right? But usually you also walk in nature, you're doing activities out in nature. It just kind of engenders that level of participation with the natural world when you're in nature versus, you know, many of us are working from home or, you know, obviously spending more time at home. I don't know about you guys, but I've got COVID-10, you know, the 10 pounds that I've gained since, you know, this whole epidemic has started, because it's changed my activity level, you know, and changed how I'm, you know, doing my daily routine. But I think the bigger piece of this is to understand that, that health and wellness, it isn't like you're either health or you're ill, right? It's not, health is not the absence of disease, right? I mean, health is so much more of that. Many of us can have a disease, but still live a healthy life. It's a continuum that this guy, oh, now I'm forgetting his name. I think it's Freeze. But he creates this salutogenic continuum of care, and health and wellness goes along that continuum. And the more we can engage with nature, with activity, with each other as well, right? But with each other in natural settings, that it reduces our stress, it restores our attention, it enhances our immune function. I mean, one of the big issues with social distancing and all of this, you know, all of these additional measures, and please, I'm not trying to sound cavalier, but it is also compromising our own inherent immune capacity and integrity. You know, like the folks that are like excessive hand washers, right? I mean, there's a time and a place for hand washing. I'm not a crazy person, okay? But when you're excessively doing that, right? You know, when we excessively use hand sanitizers, even before the COVID, are you familiar with all of this research? When everybody's got it hanging on their pocketbook or their keys or something, some little thing, and they're sanitizing all the time. We're cleaning our children all the time. We're not allowing them to, you know, get dirty, play in the mud, eat the sticks, you know, do all the crazy things that might sound gross to us, but actually boosts our immune system. And so when we disconnect with nature, we're actually increasing our vulnerability to organisms that may actually, you know, they used to live in harmony with us, but now not. And so, but that isolation also fuels our mental wellness in addition, right? So, you know, the isolation that we're experiencing in lockdown is also confounding our mental health, and people are not going out into nature. And so we're seeing a rise in these mental illnesses as a consequence of our response to a global pandemic that is really in effect a consequence of our disregard for the planet at large. If you think about it from a species, species perspective. So, you know, again, just being aware of that, you know, it's obvious then the healing nature of nature itself. There was one quick study that actually, and it was probably one of the first studies that looked at hospital architecture and nature. And it was a bunch of adult patients post-op. I forget what their surgery was, you know, but they looked at the length of stay and the use of pain medication post-op for patients who had a window that looked out at a brick building, and then patients that had a window that looked over a courtyard, a garden. And the people that had the view of the garden actually had a lower utilization of pain medications and went home sooner than the other folks. And then there's also this continuum then of exposure to nature. I mean, I've now gotten into that. It's a treat for me. Like I buy flowers for myself. I actually have flowers delivered to myself every month because I always want to have fresh flowers. And I know if I do it that way, I can guarantee that I have that little bit of nature, little bit of beauty in, you know, in my microenvironment. And, you know, and there are always different flowers, and it does something for me. It does something for me, spiritually, physically, mentally, you know, the whole kit and caboodle. And so realizing that is a real, you know, kind of another like tool in our toolkit when we're looking at helping others. You know, who doesn't love to receive, you know, a bouquet of flowers or a plant, or who doesn't love to go for a walk outdoors? So just kind of understanding our connection with nature. It's the essence of who we are. We are a part of nature. We're an expression of nature.
Yes. So mental health is not just a benefit of nature, but we also have physical health, of course, you know, just getting outside, moving your body.
Exactly.
Actually made my students run yesterday during class. I made them run outside. I was teaching them cellular respiration. It's really
cool.
Miss Johnsen, why are we doing this? I'm like, well, one, it's good for your health, and two, it's for the experience of the lesson. So, you know, just getting outside and moving around. You know, there's examples even now of, we're seeing in other countries such as the UK, Japan, and Canada even, where doctors are actually prescribing nature instead of just, here's a bottle of medicine. Let's prescribe something more holistic, you know, to things that aren't life-threatening, of course, you know, whether that be non-communicable diseases or mental health, or even, you know, physical health. Prescribing nature for physical health can also be, you know, a fantastic remedy. So, you know, doctors in Japan are starting to prescribe something called forest bathing, where they actually prescribe that patients go and walk and spend, you know, a camping trip, or just spend and immerse themselves in an area that is green and blue, because, you know, as Mary alluded, you know, seeing that, being in, you know, just immersed in that environment does good, not just for our mental health, but also for our physical, because our mental health is inherently tied to our physical health as well. And even in Canada, doctors are now prescribing patients to visit museums and, you know, attend workshops to boost their, you know, sense of community, or to alleviate depression, or even just to get out and about. If you live in a big city, something, you know, like going hiking in the mountains, you know, I can't do that here in South Florida because it's flat. So, you know, going to things like that, being part of a community, walking about, getting involved, those are things that, you know, are beneficial, not just for mental health, but also for physical health as well. And of course, you can't have mental health and physical health without really including spiritual health, which is something that I never really fully considered or thought about until I met Mary. And this is where it really has, again, come full circle for me. And it's really just so empowering. And you know, this quote here, science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality, by Carl Sagan. So Mary, what is spiritual health?
Well, I mean, if you look in the literature, spiritual health is really, it's the essence of our existence. It gives meaning and purpose to our life. Religion is one expression of spirituality, but spirituality is kind of like that bigger umbrella. It's that sense of connectedness with each other, with the planet, and with a larger consciousness, a larger source of energy, or, you know, existence, or God. You know, it's lots of different words that we use. And I think, you know, you kind of alluded to it, you know, not a lot of folks think about spiritual health, like I'm spiritual, but is there a health factor around that? And there is, for sure. And we oftentimes in healthcare, we don't really pay attention to the spiritual health dimensions of those that we serve. You know, certainly infants may not, you know, have identified, you know, verbally, because they can't, but what's the family's need for spiritual health is really, really relevant, and we need to tap into that. Again, that's one of the attributes, one of the lessons around the Caritas processes talks about that spiritual dimension. Mel shares here in the group that after suffering from chronic depression and anxiety, since she's moved to a remote island immersed in wildlife every day, she's been well for 6 years. So it's transformative. There's a miraculous aspect to nature that fills us up, mind, body, and spirit. And I can tell you, I mean, if it's the island that's done this for you, Mel, I mean, you're just an amazing human being with inner wisdom and a connection to, a greater sense of awareness and a greater alignment with the spirit that is within all of us, regardless of our religious orientation. And that's the piece, that I feel when I am connected with nature, when I hold my bouquet, or when I'm out in the yard, and probably when you're on the beach or in the mountains, that many people describe it as a spiritual event, and that nourishes their soul, and that's how you foster that dimension of human health that is the spiritual component.
Yes. And so when Carl Sagan says that science is actually a profound source of spirituality, I thought of that, and I'm like, well, again, that's something that we really don't even associate, again, because a lot of times we tend to associate spirituality with religion. But as you said, Mary, they can actually be completely different things. A lot of times they are interrelated. But for those who may not be religious, spirituality is still something that, in various different levels can be, inside of us. And so, that feeling of interconnectedness, there we go, that's a very, very big word, I think draws us, to feel this greater sense of self, and knowing that, we are part of something bigger. And what's so interesting about that is that, we are biologically wired to want to be part of a community. And, from our ancestors thousands of years ago, we have evolved to want, and to even subconsciously need to feel part of a community, because that is what keeps us alive.
Yeah.
And so, that feeling of needing to be part of something even greater than ourselves, that is spirituality. That is interconnectedness. That is spiritual health.
And I think as again, we get in lots of comments down here that oftentimes it's, people can feel shame. People can feel, kind of wanted to keep it behind the curtain. It's seen as woo-woo sometimes, when we're demonstrative and open about our spirituality, not seeing it as a part or a facet of our strength and our identity as human beings. So I think this is really great, and it's a critical part of saving the planet, by embracing all of the dimensions of who we are as organisms on the planet. We're multifaceted. We can appreciate that connection with the planet at large. I don't know how many of you guys have ever read the book, The Celestine Prophecy. I read it a long, long time ago, right? And it's always stayed with me. And I don't know if you ever do this, Betsy, but like there are times when I go out for a walk and I want to feel that connection with that spiritual energy on the planet, and I'll put my hand, like just as I'm walking, like if there's hedges, because I live in the city, right? So I'll just put my hand a little bit close to the hedge and just try and feel the energy, from Mother Nature. And I feel it, and it really, it fills me up. And now that I'm saying it, I'm thinking I need to go back out and do that again, do that more, because it does help you reawaken that sense of connection that you were talking about, Emily, and connectedness that is vital for us to be these champions and agents of change for planetary health, that we all win when we impact the health of the planet. So
yeah, and that connectedness and that feeling, there's another term for that, and it's called nature quantifiable in data. This has been tested by many reputable universities. Nature relatedness is it's the development of emotional connection to the natural world, which is cool. And you, in your reflection journal that we will be sending all of you, you can actually go, there's a link inside there that you can go and take a test that will give you your nature relatedness score, which is really interesting. So the higher your score, it's positively associated with general health, mental well-being, empathy, of course, pro-environment attitudes and behaviors, and even humanitarianism. And it is negatively associated with materialism and the other societal barriers that we discussed earlier. And so one of the big questions of involved in planetary health is, how is this nature relatedness fostered, especially in children, and can it be continuously fostered up until you are and up until you die? Is this something that's continuously fostered, or at what point in your life is that defined? And so those are questions that are still being researched, and we kind of need to know. So it's really interesting. So again, now we're seeing this word high level wellness. Again, this was really proposed by Dr. Halbert Dunn, and it unfortunately wasn't popularized until he died. So around the 1980s is when this kind of came into being, several years afterwards. But it's high level wellness. It's kind of says it beautifully right here. It's really a journey, and it's not a destination. When we try to achieve, how healthy can we be? We, as perfectionists, even like myself, we tend to think that there is a top to that ladder. Well, I got news for you, there's not. So in high level wellness, it is a continuous challenge. It's an ever progressive direction towards a higher potential, both in physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And so all of these things mixed together, create that high level wellness, or the living your life at a fuller potential. So again, this was really elaborated beautifully by Prescott, Logan, and Katz in that paper. And they kind of describe it as vitality, aka your zest, or your energy for life. So achieving high level wellness is extremely important. But Mary, from like a medical perspective, which is kind of like just makes me wonder, like how can you identify someone that is achieving high level wellness? Like, is that a quality that you think like unhealthy people have, or that they lack? Like how can you or anyone else as a medical professional like help patients to achieve this?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's a critical part of preventative health that I think we don't fully capitalize on in the work that we do, because again, in kind of traditional healthcare, we're very symptom oriented, and we tend to just focus on the presenting pathology, but not really understanding all of the other aspects, like kind of what we just talked in the previous slides, that really contribute to overall health. So I think what we as clinicians really need to pay attention to is the fact that there is a need for us to address the spiritual health of the patients and families that we're serving, right? Really uncovering what's their backstory. So because a lot of the backstory really can help inform what are the presenting symptoms, what is the challenge that this patient is facing in the moment. And I think the reason why we kind of have a blind spot to that is that, we don't take good care of ourselves, right? I mean, it's really hard to bring your A game to your patients if you're not bringing your A game to yourself. And so that idea of high level wellness begins with us feeling it, living it, breathing it, soaking it up, and realizing that, holy moly, this feels really great. I want to give this to the people that, I'm serving, and help them realize. So ask those questions, how do we support you spiritually? What are the challenges that you're facing economically? What's your nutrition? Where are you living? Are you in a food desert? All of these kinds of things. And how are we as the healthcare community supporting your overall health and wellness? Do we just have vending machines with junk in them? Are we not supporting their transportation? Is parking abhorrent? So that's why these families aren't able to come to the hospital on a regular basis, because they can't afford. Did I just go wobbly? Because I just got a sign that I'm unstable. I hope I'm back.
I can hear you.
But it's all of those things, when we think about high level wellness. And I love the use of the word wellness, because we often think about health and illness. And the wellness is along that continuum, right? The high level wellness is you're closer to that, healthy lifestyle that, that Fries talks about from a salutogenic perspective. So I think, really recognizing that is critical for us if we're going to do no harm and really be those agents of healing that we've signed up to be.
Exactly. Lovely. I love the way you said that. Well, and of course, that is where we get into trauma-informed care. Planetary Health is more of a I shouldn't say it's more of a biological perspective. So is the medical field, of course. But when you're integrating both of these things together, it's like, what the heck? So, from a non-medical perspective, when I first heard this, I was like, I have no idea what this is referring to. So enlighten the rest of us, Mary.
Well, and I think, so I confiscated this paradigm from behavioral health, the world of behavioral health, where the idea of trauma-informed care is more like a reactive approach to individuals that have had a trauma history. So being trauma-informed is really about recognizing, okay, this person has endured some significant trauma in their life, and so understanding that guides how I engage with other. But it actually has an amazing opportunity to be a preventative strategy. But before you can become trauma-informed, you first have to become trauma-aware. That trauma is happening, right? And I think that might be part of the challenge that I've had in introducing this concept, is that many folks aren't trauma aware. So when I'm coming at them about, it's important that you be trauma informed, they're like, get out of here, you crazy chick. They don't recognize it. And just recently, like literally 2 days ago, maybe, or this week at least, I was introduced to this really cool definition of trauma. Traditional definitions are very relevant, and it's basically a situation that overwhelms an individual or an organism's ability to cope, that is seen as a life threat to their safety and security. But another definition is also trauma is when an individual's reality is not seen or known. And so I want you to think about that with regard to the planet, but also ourselves, right? Think about, for my Nicu colleagues or my pediatric colleagues on the call, the babies that we're serving, they're pre-verbal. And we often don't see their trauma. And when I say, when I'm using the word seen, it's acknowledging it, right? We don't see it. And so by not seeing it, we're kind of making it non-existent. Right? We're not acknowledging it. And that same logic can be applied to the planet. When we're not acknowledging, when we're not trauma aware, and we're not acknowledging that rampant deforestation isn't traumatic to the planet and all of its inhabitants, then we're denying the reality of the planet, right? Which we've been doing, right? Climate change is just a consequence of our denial of the reality of the trauma that is happening to the planet. These little babies and families that we're caring for, in denying and acknowledging the trauma that they're experiencing, we are setting them up for all of the consequences that we know that are linked to early life adversity. which includes, right, derailment in healthy development, psychological illnesses, bipolar disease, suicide, depression, cardiovascular disease, obesity. I mean, you know, we're just basically setting them up because we refuse to acknowledge the trauma. And because of course, when you're aware and you acknowledge it, you can't unknow it, right? You can't unacknowledge it, right? Once you know it, you're compelled, if you're a good-hearted soul, to do something about it. And so I think this for me was really kind of transformative in seeing the relevance of this paradigm for the planet. The paradigm is really shifting, as you see here in the low. It's moving from a what's wrong with you approach, which we're all over in healthcare, right? It's what's wrong with you. What are your presenting symptoms? What's wrong with you? To what happened to you? And it's really exciting to see more and more research is really highlighting to us the connection that it's the what happened that's really the behind the scenes story of the cascade of physiologic responses to the what happened to me. Because if the what happened to me, for example, was, you know, if I was abandoned as a young child, that activated a stress response in me. And that set me up to believe that the world is a scary place and I can't trust anybody. And so I'm always on guard. So I'm always in a hyper alert state. I'm always hyper vigilant. What that means biochemically is my hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Sorry for all of you non-nerds out there, but that's my stress response system. It's like going cuckoo nuts, right? It's on overdrive and it's secreting all of these chemicals in my body that are actually, they shouldn't be in my body unless I'm trying to run away from a lion, right? These are chemical mediators that are for fight or flight, but not for everyday living. So if my everyday living is being exposed to these inflammatory mediators, that's what they are, I'm signing my death warrant. I'm actually creating illness, future illness in my body as a consequence. And that's the same thing that's happening to the planet. There's nothing wrong with the planet. It's what's happening to the planet that's causing all of the problems, right? It's a mirror for us. And so, you know, when I introduce this idea of trauma-informed care to humans, you know, I use this operational strategy of these core measures. So meeting the disease-independent needs of the organism, of the human. So it's creating a healing environment. The planet's part of that, right? It's protecting sleep. It's the ADLs for my non-medical colleagues. It's about posture and play. It's about eating and nourishment. It's about hygiene and skincare practices. Pain and stress, it's preventing it, but when it happens, it's assessing and managing it. And it's involving loved ones in the support to mitigate the pain and stress. And usually those loved ones are the next bubble over, the family. And how, I mean, Emily, you were talking about this. We are a social species. We need social connectedness. That's how we view our own value and how we get through things. We get through things together. And so if you wouldn't mind just jumping to the next slide, you know, so I've been working with this group to try and say, okay, so those are 5 core measures. Those are the details. Is there a way of kind of creating a bundle, like a conceptual bundle that represents this essence of trauma-informed care? And this is still a work in progress, but it was really cool that we came up with this, and that I think it kind of has implications for the planet. Let's see what you guys think. But those core measures are really designed to create a sense of safety, right? A sense of connection and a sense of comfort. And at the confluence of these 3 concepts or constructs, we know then the organism or the individual or the planet can thrive if we can ensure safety, connection, and comfort. And so go ahead to the next one. So then, you know, when Emily and I were talking about this, we're getting all jazzed up going, I see this, I can see this, you know, as a bundle of care for humans, but I think I can see it as a bundle of care for the planet at large. And so that's what we really want to throw out to you guys. And really, you know, brainstorm around, what are your thoughts about these principles with regard to planetary health? How do we make the planet feel or be safe, be in connection, and protect its comfort? I don't know how many of you guys have watched this movie. It's an animated movie, and I am a bit of an animated movie junkie. Fern Gully. It's an animated movie, Fern Gully. Anybody? It's okay if you haven't, but it's about these little fairy beings that live in nature. They protect nature, and they talk about the wounds of nature and the feelings of the trees, and as living organisms. And I think if you have any awareness of quantum physics, we know that these are living organisms. They just live differently than us, right? I mean, they have a different configuration than us, but they are made of the same quantum elements. And so being able to connect with that, I think we can move over and see about these principles. But I'm going to try really hard to stop talking and open up the chat box and ask you guys to weigh in. Are there other values, beyond safety, connection, and comfort that come to mind that we can kind of, adopt, as we become this collection of agents of change for planetary health that will help guide our mission and guide our actions? What are your thoughts? I've not seen The Forest Unseen, Bob, but I'm definitely going to check it out. Do you go ahead? A book by Haskell. Okay, cool. All right. Do you think we can create some safety for the planet, a sense of connection and comfort? Could we create a planetary health toolkit that blends medical and non-medical? Yes, Susie, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's why we have question marks here, because, they integrate so nicely for trauma-informed care, but humans are not the only things living here. So when we're talking about this from a global perspective, talking about the planet as a whole, do these values really, do they resonate with planetary health? Does it not really fit at all? Are there other terms that would be better fit here? Mary and I have been brainstorming this back and forth, but if we're going to be talking about this more in the future, we want to make sure that the words that we use here are resonate with our audience. So education, yes. Pocahontas, yes. Love me some Disney.
I think they do. Thanks, Isabel. Can you give examples? And I know that we're kind of asking you to think outside of the box. I
did like education that was put here again, because all of these things really revert back to education. We don't know what we don't know. And in order to solve a lot of these global issues, we have to first be aware of them. And education is the fastest avenue through that.
Yeah, very nice, Isabel. Connection, accepting or being open to other cultures, beliefs, and practices, and sharing them. Yep. Connection also fosters caring. Yes. Connecting with nature. Yes.
Yes, I can later in the email, Susie, but I don't have it on me as of right now. But yes, I know what you're talking about. So I can do that later. Very cool. All right, so some good insights there. Mary and I will keep brainstorming, but we just kind of wanted to run some of these things by you to see if, safety, comfort, and connection, if that actually resonates with planetary health, or maybe we were completely out in left field. So just wanted to kind of get your perspective there. But, overall, when we integrate, we're integrating both of these two concepts here, trauma-informed care and planetary health. And so at this point, we're starting to see these individuals, whether that's, you know, you and me, or whether that's the dog or the cat, you know, as these, again, this was by Prescott, Logan, and Katz. They coined this phrase, and I love it so much, as living embodiments of past experiences. You know, to understand that we must focus on fixing broken systems, not symptoms, at multiple scales of person, place, and planet. So, you know, we are all living, breathing, and walking stories. You know, we're not just people. You know, we have similarities in shared experiences, but that, you know, in combination with who you are, you know, your DNA, what makes you genetically different, makes those experiences and traumas and responses unique to you. So it's not just our DNA that make us different. It's all of those collective, you know, experiences and even traumas throughout our lives that make us different. So if we all want to understand the human body better, we also, I think, have to take into account each individual's past experiences, you know, that got them to this point. And again, from a planetary perspective, we have to do that as well. But what's interesting here is, you know, focusing on fixing broken systems, not symptoms. And that's what, you know, Mary was alluding to earlier. And in the medical field, a lot, I see it. You know, Mary, you said that it's pretty much what it is. You are putting a Band-Aid, no pun intended, you're putting a Band-Aid over the problem. And so, you know, at that point, we're just fixing the symptoms. We're not really addressing, you know, the root of the problem. We're not getting to the heart of that problem. And if not, then we're just going to continue to see these issues pop up if we don't do something about it. So this is what leads me to just kind of a quick example, you know, the case for GMO foods. This is not a diatribe that I'm going to spew at you whether GMO foods are good for you or bad for you. That is entirely another conversation. But this is just really in itself what genetically modified organisms are and the reason for them. You know, genetically modified organisms, GMO foods, we are creating them. We have now bioengineered these crops that we eat because we need them to be more pest resistant. We need them to be more drought resistant because of the very changes that we ourselves are afflicting upon the earth and our climate. So this is a prime example of this is a prime example of just addressing the symptoms instead of fixing the overall system. You know, as a result of that, we are destroying our topsoil, which is projected to kind of erode within the next 50 years or so. It's kind of scary. It's in my lifetime. You know, we are trying to feed more people when in reality we're on a path to these global food shortages, even though we have the ability to feed the entire planet. You know, hunger and famine should not be a thing, but we're just doing it so inefficiently. And, you know, commercial agriculture is just destroying our topsoil. And so the ways that we're doing this, in addition with the, you know, creation of GMO foods, is really just hindering, you know, planetary health and hindering the progress that we could be making at a larger scale. So, you know, it's funny because Mother Nature, it already has a foolproof plan for weeding out the less resilient, and that is called evolution. But we are causing so many problems in such a short amount of time that, you know, nature's natural processes are really too slow to keep up. And so that's where we're having, again, to put Band-Aids on these symptoms. And again, these GMO foods that we're seeing, again, it's just a really good example of that. And so that's why I bring it up.
And I think it's important, though, because we also don't know the longer term health implications, you know, for us biologically as well, you know. So I think it is something to be thinking about, you know. I just don't think anybody does it better than Mother Nature, but obviously I'm not, you know, driving the car. But I think you bring up a really good point about how we're trying to outsmart nature, and it oftentimes, if we haven't learned it yet, I don't know when we're going to learn it, it oftentimes backfires.
Exactly, it definitely does. So that's what leads us to ecological relationships. You know, the easiest way that I've grown to better understand these interconnectivities within planetary health is by looking at our human relationship from an ecological lens. You know, we tend to think that ecological relationships are exclusively modeled for other organisms, but they're really not. You know, we are animals too, and therefore, you know, I use this word lightly, but you know, we're slaves to not only biogeophysical processes, but also to their models in ecology. And so, what do I mean by that? It's plain and simple, and that's, you know, symbiosis or symbiosis. And that is any type of close, long-term biological interactions that you have between organisms. So there's three kinds here. You have mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism, for those maybe who are not familiar. So mutualism is when you have both organisms that positively benefit from one another. You know, in nature, we see this, of course, between the flower and the honeybee. The honeybee is gaining that nectar to turn into honey, whereas the flower is being pollinated and is able to reproduce and carry on its genes. In terms of humans, I think of mutualism as, you know, the goods and services industry. Every time you are, you know, hiring someone to repair, maybe your AC is broken. Of course, that is a benefit to you because your AC gets repaired, but also that person repairing gets, you know, benefited by the amount of money that you pay them. So collaboration on projects, ideas, even this webinar, I would consider a mutualistic relationship, because I would at least hope, in my humble opinion, that our information is you know, insightful and useful to all of you. But at the same time, you all are giving us back some, you know, good feedback, and it's also better helping you know, Mary and I in our professional careers. So that is a beneficial and mutualistic relationship. Whereas commensalism in ecology, that occurs when one organism positively benefits and the other is not harmed in any way. So in nature, we see, of course, like a bird or any animal using trees for shelter. You know, that tree is not harmed usually. And of course, that bird or that other organism gets to have a home, gets shade. In humans, as we mentioned earlier, we are crawling with microorganisms on our bodies. And the majority of those microorganisms, they don't necessarily serve a purpose for us, but they also don't hurt us necessarily in any way. So, you know, some bacteria that we have, it's not necessarily detrimental. It's just there. It doesn't hurt us, but we just have it there. And that bacteria or certain microorganisms, they have a home, and it's right here on our bodies. So weird to think about. I'm getting away from that one. And so in terms of human lives, commensalism, I think about whenever we're helping one another. You know, someone's walking down the street and their bag of groceries just falls to the ground. You know, generally, if you're a good person, you would go over and help that person. So that person is positively benefited. Whereas, you know, for me, helping that person, it doesn't harm me in any way. It's not necessarily beneficial to me. It doesn't hurt me, but it's definitely positive for that person. And so, you know, as humans, that's where, you know, this commensalism, it really takes precedence, because more so than most other organisms, we have the capacity for empathy. And that is what, you know, arguably the majority of other organisms lack. We have empathy, whereas many others, you know, may not have that capability. So commensalism is really prevalent in the human species and human race. Now, parasitism, last but not least, you know, occurs when one organism positively benefits and the other is negatively affected. So of course, parasitism is named after, you know, parasites. Everyone knows what parasites are. Those can in many cases be extremely detrimental to both humans and other organisms. even a strangler fig. It's a type of plant that actually grows around other trees, eventually to the point where it strangles and can even suffocate another tree, so that one dies, and the strangler fig lives. So there's even parasitism in plants. But in terms of humans, this is really, from a planetary health human footprint perspective, parasitism is really what we're seeing a lot of, both from human to human and human to non-human relationships. So again, going back to exploitation of natural resources, quote unquote dirty business, where you are maybe gaining a lot of money and gypping out another company or another group of people out of the effort or even the amount of money that they should be paying. Sexual abuse can even be considered parasitism. Benefits the perpetrator, whereas that victim is extremely harmed both physically and mentally. And slave labor, that's just to think that those things still happen today is disheartening. But we still have all of these relationships happening even within our own species, whereas most of the time, from a biological perspective, we think of it as just for animals. This applies only to animals, but it really doesn't. So it's all there in different forms of symbiosis. But now we get into the cosmos and consciousness, being rooted, and of course thinking about all of these relationships. This is Mary's forte here, almost wrapping it up pretty quickly. But what
I did want to make that note too. I mean, we have got just a few more slides, literally just I think two more slides. So hang in there. But this is really, we felt that this was an important kind of summarization slide to really help us realign and reconnect with the awareness that, consciousness defines our existence. Okay, we know that. And we know that it's a subjective awareness of phenomenal experiences, right? With our inner and our outer worlds. These are, it's kind of like an extension, if you will, of spirituality. And what we now know from a scientific perspective, because, historically the idea of consciousness and that sort of thing was generally like, philosopher turf, the great philosophers would talk about consciousness and all this kind of esoteric language. But now in the advent of, or in the wake rather of the, scientific revolutions that introduced us to the quantum fields and quantum mechanics and quantum physics, we really now understand that there are neural correlates. There are parts of our brain that are correlated to consciousness and actually have demonstrated that there is indeed the existence of this grander consciousness within the universe that speaks to the quantum mechanics or the quantum physics of our physicality and our universality with all that is one. And so understanding that and really embracing that, you don't have to think about it every day, but you just have to acknowledge that we are connected, that our society and our world and our economics really benefits when we emphasize our individuality, not as individuals, but like as separate beings. And there's a difference, right? We're not separate beings. We are a spiritual being having a physical experience in the world. We now have a better understanding of that and scientific proof of that reality. And when we use the word beings, it's not just our fellow human beings, but it's our fellow earthly beings. What other organisms and beings, as Betsy used at the beginning, are we sharing this experience with? And nature is a very big part of that. That each of us are really a metaphor and a microcosm of the larger universe, of the larger planet. And so, you got to get your head around this. And I understand that there's lots of metaphysical and existential dimensions about what it is that I'm sharing with you. But that's the piece that roots us we're rooted in that reality that we're oftentimes not even conscious of. And I kind of like, when we were batting this back and forth, Emily and I said, this is really reminding me of, the work that we do in the hospital, when something goes wrong and we do a root cause analysis of what underpinned the problem here. It wasn't just Mary gave the wrong med, the wrong med, there's like a cascade of events, right? We do that root cause. This slide and this summit really is an invitation for us all to do a root cause analysis, but not even an analysis, a root cause or a root discovery of our shared humanity. To just swing back to my friend Jean Watson, when she talks about unitary caring science, she really is inviting us to become aware of not only our shared humanity, but our shared connection with all that is. And whether all that is God, is source, is, whatever it is, there is a root connection that really we can use that energy and that information and that awareness to inform how we will collectively move together to transform and heal our planet and each other in meaningful and truly measurable ways. And I love on the next slide, so, of course, the biologist has to step in and translate this into something that I think it's easier to get our heads around. But then I want you to think about this all enveloped with that universal consciousness.
Yes, thanks, Mary. And again, we're wrapping this up, guys. But this is really what brings this all together. So in terms of biological levels of organizations, really funny, I just taught this to my students. But you have the very basic unit of life, which is a cell. Cells come together to make tissues. Tissues come to make organs, and so on and so forth. And so when we integrate trauma-informed care into planetary health, we really, from a medical perspective, I think up to the organism level is really where the main focus of medical care comes in. It's always the individual. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but from a planetary health standpoint, we can't just focus on the organism. We have to take into consideration populations, communities, ecosystem, and the entire biosphere, because all of these things compound into one another. They all make up each other. And so, even from the biosphere all the way down to the cells, again, that interconnectedness is so crucial to understanding, this various solutions to planetary health. So to conclude with all of you, there's probably many thoughts swirling through your heads. Where do I begin? What can I do now that I understand more about planetary health? So as both medical professionals and even non-medical professionals, trauma-informed care is something that you can practice, whether that's with your patients or with your family and friends, instead of, as Mary was saying, not asking, what's wrong with you, but rather what happened to you? Help me to understand. Forming that relationship with those people and even with your communities at a larger scale can really, bring a sense of, trauma-informed care to that practice. Again, viewing patients as embodiments of past experiences, I love that, not as whether you're sick or healthy, because health is so much more than that. Fixing those systems and not symptoms. We can't just keep putting Band-Aids over things. Prescribing nature, for those of you who have the power to do so. That is such a powerful thing, and there's nothing hippie or wrong with it, as long as it's not a life-threatening issue. Instead of giving someone a bottle of pills, try prescribing nature. That is definitely a route that we can take. Practicing empathy in ourselves. That is in our children, as parents, as teachers. That is something that we need to do better in all of our lives. Getting out and exploring, again, nature relatedness. Foster that in yourself, foster that in your family and friends. It really makes you a better person. And of course, as we were saying earlier, what can we all do every day? Just be kind. Being kind, again, really improves planetary health on so many different levels. And, that's really where I love this by Martin Luther King Jr. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. We have to fight the good fight. We can't fight poverty and all these issues of authoritarianism and racism. We can't fight that with more hate. We have to fight it with the goodness in our hearts. Not to sound too sappy, but
not sappy at all, Emily. It's what it is. And I think, what you've really highlighted is that love can conquer all. And I think everybody coming together and spending these 2 hours with us is just a beautiful exemplar of the love that this community has, for the babies and families we serve, but also for our world and for our planet. And so, we both hope that this information was relevant, was interesting, but also inspiring and exciting. We are all in this together, absolutely. We have the potential to change everything. I love this. There's another really cool quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And so, as we conclude this, yes, we're going to have a network to brainstorm together going forward. Absolutely. And so what we've done is we've created a Facebook group, and I think some of the emails, I don't know if they've all gone through, but we're going to follow up with an email. I'll include the link to the Facebook group. So if you haven't gotten the invite to join, just click on that and we'll get you in there, because we feel that that's a nice vehicle where we'll have all of these like-minded folks, to really come together and brainstorm next steps. Also, this recording will be hosted on my learning management system so that you can review this. We're going to share some articles and other references, and you can also dialogue and share comments on that platform as well. We really want to get some energy and excitement and enthusiasm going, but to be honest, we need more. We need action. And I want you to look at this webinar, and as we close down, as a true call to action. And Em, do you mind just kind of sharing, just kind of like what the digital reflection book looks like? You'll all be receiving this. There's lots of places where you can, as Emily shared, discover your nature-related score, but also brainstorm as well. And once we kind of get all of this out there and we follow up with you, what we want to do is then look at what's the next step. Where do we go from here? And I think the reflections that you're going to capture in this book and the actions that you're going to identify are really going to help guide where those next steps are. It's a beautiful tool. And you talk about it. It's absolutely.
Yeah, again, and if any of you need to leave, feel free to do so. This will be sent to your email within the next day or so. Just for those of you who are still with us, we're just kind of giving you guys a sneak peek. So this is a digital reflection journal with resources that we will be sending all of you. Really, again, to kind of, that goes over everything in a nice, complete nutshell of what we talked about, but also will allow you to, reflect upon what was talked about and really reflect upon yourselves and how to get these actions going, because more often than not, we all want to make a difference, but we have something, I don't know what it is. It could be many different things, but we just have something that holds us back. And so this is what I hope will kind of get you inspired and actually, help you kind of chug along in that process. So use it as you want to. Again, these are editable, so you can download it as you'd like to, but it integrates everything that we have talked about here today.
And we'll be, reaching out to see when can we reconnect, and what does that reconnection look like, and what are our next steps. Again, no one can do that. I mean, we all can make a difference in our own way, right? But we can certainly make a bigger difference when we're really doing this all together. Barb would love to, help, support you in your efforts in addressing the, sustainability challenges in your hospital, and everyone else. How can we do this locally, but also globally, is really where Em and I are coming at this from. So Thank you. Thank you so very much. Please feel free to throw some, comments in the chat box. For my CE needy friends, I will be following up with a survey, and everyone will get a certificate for the 2 hour of attendance. I do want to be respectful of your time as well, though. So there. But any burning questions, any burning thoughts? Actually, we'd like to just say, what was your greatest insight from this webinar? Would you like to share, both on Facebook and here in the Zoom room? What was your greatest insight? And if you could just either auditorily or vocally share or put it in the chat box, that would be just amazing.
I'll share. Hi, I'm Christy.
Yeah.
Emily, super nice to hear you speak today. I work with Mary, and so I know her well, but wow, it was really great to hear you speak. And I so loved that symbiosis slide with the relationship of the nature in those terms to people. I thought that was amazing. So that was my greatest insight. Loved it.
Cool, cool.
Thank you for sharing.
Anyone else? Greatest insights? I'm grateful to connect with others who are interested in this. Yes. You're definitely, no one's getting away scot-free. We got your email addresses. We got you here.
Thank you, Tara.
So impressed. Oh, this is really great. Thank you guys again. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your insights. We look forward to continuing this discussion and continuing this collaboration. For all my TIP folks, thank you for coming to this. I hope that you see kind of, bigger opportunities as you embark on your journey to become a trauma-informed professional. For everyone else, I'll share more information about that and invite you to join us on this journey to becoming trauma-informed professionals as well. This is not just for healthcare professionals. This is for all individuals who are looking for a kinder, more compassionate world. So thank you so very much again for your time. Mwah.